In Chapter 1, Part 4 podcast, we're going to really look at where our ideas about the environment come from. We know that as we degrade our resources and environmental quality goes down, our response to that can be classified into 4 different stages. So we're going to talk about those 4 stages, and we're also going to talk about some of the environmentalists who really pushed forward the environmental movement.
Alright, so now we're going to start to talk about what some of the historic roots of the environmental movement and where our ideas about the environment come from. Many of our current responses to changes are rooted in the writings of relatively recent environmental thinkers. For simplicity's sake, their work is grouped into 4 distinct stages. And the first stage is resource conservation for optimal use. The second stage is nature preservation for moral and aesthetic reasons. The third stage is concern over health and ecological consequences of pollution. And the fourth stage is global environmental citizenship. Keep in mind that these stages are not mutually exclusive. You might embrace them all simultaneously. And as you read and listen to this section, read in your book and listen on the podcast, consider why you agree with those that you find most appealing. Nature protection has historic roots. One of the first people to make note of human misuse of nature was Plato, who complained in the 4th century BC that Greece was once blessed with fertile soil and clothed with abundant forests of fine trees. After the trees were cut to build houses and ships, heavy rains washed the soil into the sea, leaving a rocky skeleton of a body wasted by disease, in his words. So he's one of the first people to describe the impact of not protecting our natural resources. The book Man and Nature, which was written in 1864 by George Perkins Marsh, was the beginning of environmental protection in North America. After that book came out, national forest reserves were established in the U.S. in 1873. Roosevelt and Pinchot began pragmatic utilitarian conservation. The basis of their policies was considered pragmatic utilitarian conservation. They argued that the forest should be saved not because they were beautiful or because they shelter wild creatures of the wilderness, but only to provide homes and jobs for people. Resources should be used for the greatest good, for the greatest number, for the longest time. So basically they argued that the forest should be saved to provide homes and jobs for future generations, which is a very utilitarian concept. The next movement was the preservation movement, and ethical and aesthetic concerns are what inspired that. And John Muir was a proponent of this. John Muir was an amateur geologist, popular author, and he was also the first president of the Sierra Club. He strenuously opposed Pinchot's utilitarian policy, and he argued that nature deserved to exist for its own sake, regardless of the usefulness to us. So preservation emphasizes the fundamental right of other organisms. Aldo Leopold is our next historical figure. He's a wildlife ecologist, and he bought a very dilapidated farm and restored the chicken coop into a rustic cabin. And from there he wrote a collection of essays that are still in print today. And on that farm he planted trees in a practical experiment aimed at restoring the health and beauty of the land. And he wrote a collection of essays espousing the respect for the land. He also founded the Wilderness Society. And one thing that resonated with me that he wrote was, "We abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect," which just shows you what his relationship with the environment was. Stage 3 is the modern environmental movement, and it was a result of rising pollution levels. So poor air quality due to the burning of coal in London became an increasing problem, and in response to pollution from the chemical industries, after World War II, Rachel Carson, who's pictured here, published a book called Silent Spring in 1962. And the book awakened the public to the threats of toxic chemicals to humans as well as other species. And she and her book are what launched the modern environmental movement as we know it. Some more historical figures. are the environmental pioneers David Brower and Barry Commoner. David Brower to the right introduced many of the techniques of environmental lobbying and activism that are used today, and molecular biologist Barry Commoner is a leader in analyzing links between science, technology, and society. Both activism and research pioneered by these two gentlemen are the hallmarks of the modern environmental movement. Stage 4 involves tying environmental quality to social progress. Today's environmental movement pushes sustainable development. We've talked a lot about sustainable development being the idea that economic improvement for the world's poorest populations is possible without devastating the environment. Dr. Wangari Maathai is a notable example. She supported sustainable development in Kenya, where she founded the Greenbelt Movement. And the Greenbelt Movement is a way to organize poor rural women and restore their environment. So she's been working not only on improving the environment, but improving it through social progress.